You have to have navigational principles. I think the destination is, and that is the new strategy theory as well, right? If you read all the stuff of strategy in a complex world, they're saying that the destination may have changed. You may not want it when you get there. It may have self-destructed, blew up, that's a new world, right? But you have to have navigational principles for the journey. You have to be very clear because those act both as guardrails and as motivators. And so you approximately know what direction you're going in. That's how Google builds new products as well, right? Whether it gets used for insurgency, activism, more romance in the world is up to how the user environment uses it. So,
sort of design thinking principles and sort of prototyping and moving forward kind of.
And fail fast and succeed at leisure. But more important, understand what your navigational principles are. Don't keep saying this destination, that, because destination theory. So it's more like a guided missile. You have to keep adjusting it and you won't know it's hit target till it's hit target.
Got it.
So if in this world, more than in the world that I grew up in, if you're not open to changing destinations, you're really going to get screwed. And today there is much more joy to be had at the confluence of things.
Hello and welcome to the 18th conversation at the Play to Potential podcast series. I'm Deepak Jayaraman, the creator and curator of this series of conversations. I'm an executive coach and do work in the space of leadership development, but with a focus on leadership transitions, both in the context of companies and careers. You could visit transitioninsight.com for more details. My objective from this podcast is to have learning conversations with a range of people and share those curated insights with you. This time I'm talking to Rama Bijapurkar, one of India's most respected thought leaders on market strategy and India's consumer economy. She has an independent consulting practice and works across sectors and organization types, describing her mission as bringing market and consumer focus to business strategy. In addition to her consulting practice, Rama has served and continues to serve as an independent director on the boards of several of India's blue chip companies. She's been a regular visiting faculty at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, her alma mater, mine too. In our conversation, we spoke about how she ended up in a career at market research and the notion of sliding doors that she talks about, how we could learn from brands in the FMCG world in the context of personal branding, and how she's taken her work with the Indian consumers to different canvases and reinvented herself along the way. Without further ado, over to the conversation.
Rama, thanks for your time. Excited to be talking to you.
Yes, likewise.
Lovely. And maybe a good place to start is to get a sense of your pie chart of time today. If you could give us a sense of what you do and more importantly, why do you do what you do?
Just work time or non-work time as well?
Work time, let's say.
Or just work time?
Yeah.
So I always operate with a portfolio. So one part of what I do is my boards. Mm-hmm. So if it is board season, which is about a week in a quarter, then it's 100% of my life. There is consulting, there is teaching, and there is, for lack of a better word, I'm calling it the bucket of just meeting everybody who has anything interesting to say, who wants to meet me for whatever reason. It could be someone like you. I've already learnt enough from this conversation.
Thank you.
It could be somebody whose VC has said, why don't you go and please check this plan through her. It's just not really paid or billed consulting. Reading, writing. So I put that into the sort of knowledge and refresh bucket.
Got it.
So at different points in time, it will be different. So during, when my course is on at Ahmedabad, I spend a lot more time changing material, figuring out what to do, maybe actually teaching. Even if I don't actually teach, I like to think of it not as a pie chart of time. So my mental image is many channels, television channels, windows, whatever is the right thing.
Sure.
So many channels are beaming simultaneously sometimes, which is when you're exhausted. So during teaching time, the teaching preparation work channel is in full flow.
Right.
So I will read much more HBR at that time. I will start looking at my
old notes. So there's seasonality to that,
Yeah. So, but it will be on a war footing.
Okay.
If it's a board season, I think it's much more making notes of what I've heard and said, a little bit of preparing for them, most certainly. It's also talking and networking a lot with board colleagues to if someone's come in the previous night to sort of chat and figure it out. So it's hard to say If you take away the pie chart metaphor, it's hard to say how many channels are beaming, but...
Fair. That's an interesting metaphor. And how has that changed significantly over time? I remember you talking about this shifting significantly over a 7-8 year horizon.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about how that portfolio has evolved, and have there been points in time where there's been big shifts?
So I've changed my consulting portfolio now to much more of monetizing knowledge rather than retailing time.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm really saying that, I used to have an old nanny who used to say to me, and it sounds better in Telugu, but it basically says that if you don't, aage piche nahi maroge, if you don't die forward and backward, it sounds terrible in English, you don't know the way to the smashan. Right? So I think that's the value that I bring to clients, is that I have died a couple of times in many other contexts like this. And so I know the way to the smashan. So if I can tell you the way to the smashan in 3 minutes, I don't see why I should get paid less than somebody else who will get you to the smashan over 3 months.
Right.
Also, I think because I sit with much more data and so on and so forth, I'm able to vent that much more significantly, the so what's of that. So the shifting of that basically means that you do shorter work, but you do smarter work, and you should be able to command much more work for an hour's talk on what is the mid-market of India like.
Got it.
Or what is customer value, or how is digital changing the idea of customer value. So I'm monetizing the fact that I think a lot more about it. So that's really the kind of change. Yes, I added one more baby to my portfolio some time ago. I set up a not-for-profit think tank. It's called People Research on India's Consumer Economy. So the last time we saw any data on households in India was with NCAR, which is 2002-03 or something like that. After which they stopped doing it for a variety of reasons. And so what I did was took the team and the person who pioneered it from there and partnered with him, and we've set it up in Delhi, and we've already had 2-3 rounds of data coming out. So we're engaged with policymakers. So that's an interesting experiment for me, because I want to put more and more out in the public domain to become the industry standard and still try and make it money in the private domain. So there are times when that takes up a lot of time. And that shift has been, so I've actually now decided, so I look at the environment and decide which of these portfolios makes sense. So if I saw, for example, that there was a downturn in the economy, I will actually offer to do more advisory boards, because that's steady income, steady advice. Nobody wants to experiment with new stuff.
Got it.
Right now, I feel that with competition, with regulatory shock and awe regulation and so on, I feel that there is, everybody's now actually finally discovering the customer again. I think the demand question is no longer getting taken for granted. So I now actually want to go back and reclaim the heartland of consumer insight strategies. So I want to scale down boards, and I want to scale up the heartland, as I say, the heartland of my consulting.
Got it.
So I remember hearing the word ages back that the heartland of surf is whiteness, and why did you give it up and go looking for economy and all the other measures? So I think the heartland of mine is consumer insight and leveraging it to shape business direction. So I want to go back to the heartland. So this whole data piece also goes back to my heartland, which is consumer insight, evidence-based insight, and so on.
Got it.
So you try and so that's how each of them changes over time.
Very interesting. And if I may go back in time, Rama, one of the pieces I'm curious about is how some of the formative experiences shape us. I do believe a lot of who we are gets baked very early on. So if you had to really rewind the clock back to your school days and college days and your growing up years, are there 3-4 things either around parenting or around the climate in which you grew up, which still influence you as a person?
Yeah, well, I'm not as young as you, so I can't think that far back. It's such hazy memories, but I can tell you about screwed up parenting. So, for example, I came from a family that pushed you and pushed you and pushed you, in the sense of, it's what my daughter and I call the "where's the other 2% syndrome." which meant that if you got 98 in maths, they asked you why you didn't get 100.
In our community, it's called the where's the centum syndrome.
Centum. In fact, when my daughter was little and she said, my father told her that I got 120 out of 100 in maths because I did all the multiple choice questions. And she just looked at him and said, didn't your mummy tell you have to read the question paper properly first? So as a result of that, I think there's a relentless push. So I was just telling someone yesterday that I could give a talk and 98 people in the room could say it was fantastic. And 2 people could say, yeah, well, I don't know, it wasn't your usual. And that 2% could tank me. So on the negative side, it means you're an insecure overachiever, struggling all the time with that balance, which I've, over a period of time, tried to work hard on reducing. On the positive side, it means that you're always raising the bar for whatever it is, and you're just moving. I think that's really, and also I think it's about chasing glory more than chasing money. I think that also comes from the kind of roots that you and I share, where you're worshipping at the altar of knowledge, and you're supposed to. And the third thing is you're always told that you can't be proud about what you've achieved because it's all an accident of either birth or fate that you have either the brains or as
lottery.
They say, that's right, the birth lottery, or Saraswati dances on your tongue, but she's dancing on your tongue, right? Nothing to do with you. So it's a set of that's kind of relentless and pushing. But I think the big change also is, I got married at 19 or 20. I actually graduated from Ahmedabad at 20. I got engaged at 19 and I got married at 20. So I think the whole superwoman piece of you have to have perfect grihastha, you have to have a job. I think that in many ways, the needs of the family shaped the career, right? So you couldn't actually survive in a 9-to-5 regular job with regular pressures because the 2 such pressures couldn't exist in one family. And in my generation, you also have the extended family and the extended thing you have to take care of. So as a result, you start looking at saying, how do I get the glory that I need to get from the places that I actually can work in, given my capabilities and constraints. So it's a strategy problem you optimize for.
Yep.
So my boards, for example, to your previous question of how it's shifted, it's now shifted where I joke with some of my friends that I have the largest portfolio of unpaid boards. Okay, but I am on the board of, let's say, National Payment Corporation of India, which I'm proud to be on because I think it's writing the digital architecture and I don't care that it's really no money. Or on the board of a bank like RBL, which is quite hot because they are the only ones or one of the ones that have made money off financial inclusion and SME, or so on and so forth. So it's the bits and pieces, and I try and do one board with every regulator so that you can figure it out. So you change the portfolio to optimize.
So there's a non-financial strategic reason for you to be
and whereas earlier, and the earlier portfolio of boards I picked, and even some of them currently, is that every quarter you get educated at a board, right? Because management will kill you with PowerPoint on the environment. So if you have a rural board, and if you have, let's say, a credit rating company board, if you have a bank board, and if you have a health insurance board, and you have, let's say, an export business board, then you pretty much, whatever you have has synergy on the other side as well.
Got it. At the end, and just going back to IMA Rama, if we could sort of go back to that point in time, how did you start with a career in market research, or did that happen a few years later?
No, I was the generation where everybody came and said women need not apply, and that year the banks didn't come. I remember the guys in the class saying, what are you women going to do? Citibank is not coming. How are you ever going to get employed? But the ad agencies came. So I actually joined an advertising agency called Lintas. And I spent a year, I was assigned to the plum account called Hindustan Lever. We were the first generation of MBAs they ever took. So that was a long haul because the studio would tell you that how do you, if you don't know what a bromide is, what is the point of a fancy education? The studio, even the studio guys who in those days put your artworks together. This is pre-digital, I'm talking 78 and so on. So after a year, I remember going to my boss and saying that my job description, and I actually shuddered how brash I was job description is a cross between a peon and an errand boy, and I don't want to do it. And he said, but you have the lever account. And all the golden grade, I mean, Harish Manwani was a management trainee, same time as me, so all the golden grade guys later on were all sort of part of the system. And I did love the lever system as systems go, but it was just such a waste of time for advertising. So then he said that they were setting up the research business called Pathfinders. Would I like to go there? So there were two of us who had, between us, 1 year of experience. My friend Anand Halve, who's no more now. And we had a boss who'd come in from Australia who we gamed most of the time. And we actually went off and, did market research when the industry was nascent. And that was my entry into market research. So.
And with the wisdom of the path you've been on, for somebody who's at that cusp, thinking about a career in market research, any words of wisdom around what sort of temperaments in people succeed in that environment? What questions should a student ask himself or herself to see if that path makes sense for him or her?
I'm not a great believer in this examine a path before you go down it personally. Because I think that, at a very broad level, for example, whether you want to be whether you want to be the CEO league or rather down the CEO path, or whether you want to be down the service business, consulting, thinking, investment banking kind of path. I think those are the big choices. But I've also lived long enough and seen enough people to know that a lot of it is like that movie Sliding Doors. I don't know if you've seen the
One moment here or there.
If you enter and the doors shut, you will not go home and see your boyfriend cheating on you, and you will continue to live your humdrum life. And if you actually got through those doors in 30 seconds and you found out the reality, and then she quits, she goes to school, gets herself a better job and changes her life.
Disproportionately.
So I think there are just so many sliding doors that, I would have been an academic's wife. My husband had a PhD, and I would have been an academic's wife at IIM Ahmedabad, except that, and it would have been a completely different world, and maybe I would have done my own FPM and been an academic. But that year, IIM Ahmedabad said, we don't want inbreeding, so we don't want to hire you here, so please get out and go and make a living somewhere else and come back. And it so happened that one of his thesis guides happened to be one of the grand old men of advertising. So there was Labdi Bhandari, there was Dr. Mote, and there was Shubhrata Sengupta. And Shubhrata said that, if they don't want to hire you, come and work for me in advertising. No one in anybody's families had ever seen advertising. What's a PhD in a public distribution system doing in advertising? But it changed my life completely, right?
Got it. No, I hear you.
I'm reminded of my conversation with Pramad Sinha a few weeks back, where he spoke about the increasing tenuous link between education and careers.
Honestly, what you specialize in will not matter. In fact, this whole thing about specializing in a subject and then being in a career, and the line to that, as you know, is tenuous. It happens sometimes, but increasingly happens less and less. And so while it's important to major in something, it's not really that important to major in the right thing.
That's a good point. Right? People often come under tremendous pressure when they have to make a hard choice around a career. Recognizing that there are sliding doors that come along at various points in time, and the fact that all of us are going to have multiple careers during a lifetime is actually a liberating thought that puts the choice in perspective. If you find this content purposeful, do take a moment and leave a review on iTunes and share it with the people that you think could benefit from this. Now, back to my conversation with Rama Bijapurkar.
And just picking on that, clearly you worked in market research for a long time, and then at some point you decided to go solo and become an advisor. What point of time was that?
That was about 20 odd years later, 97, 19. I did it via McKinsey for 2 years. So yes, I worked in market research, but I sort of went through two startups, near startups in the research business. One was a complete startup with some friends from IIM Calcutta, senior guys. And one was I joined Marg, which was well established, which had just had a split within a week of joining. So we literally had to build it back because a lot of business went away. But I also did, I think the interesting thing that I did was that I had so Hindustan Lever has always been my spiritual home, and they were very special. And so I actually went back to be the insider-outsider in their system. So I worked a deal where, again, I shuddered how brash I was, but and maybe I still am, but I did say to them that you can't stand my irreverence and I can't stand your straitjacket, but we love each other. So we actually had a deal where I was the insider outsider, and that's another
and what does
story.
That mean?
It meant basically that you worked in the system, you got the equivalent grade, because I said if you don't give me the equivalent grade, your system will kill me. You know, where even the towel in the toilet depends on
you need to give me the ticket.
And how I get the tea trade depends on the grade.
Yeah.
So I got all that. I was to all event and purpose an employee, but I was not an employee of the system. So it was called a full-time consultant.
Very interesting.
Now what this enabled me to do was to be able to, and that's when I realized that there's a lot of benefit of not knowing the rules. And if you push any system on earth, it will push. So I joined their research business, technically for a marriage of convenience of 1 year, after which I would probably take over from the deputy of the business. Within 2 months, some mail was circulating somewhere about Nirma and what a problem it was, and one of their directors had come back from Harvard, and I had never heard of Michael Porter. And nobody told me you don't reply to messages that come from directors because they're rarefied. So I replied to him saying, big deal, I've worked with a lot of companies, small guys like this, and they think differently. So the next thing he knew, he summoned me, my boss was furious, and I actually did the first ever competitor analysis on Nirma within the system, which I would not have been allowed to do had I been within the system. So I realized that if you sacrifice your career path security, you can actually get to do a lot more stuff that you otherwise couldn't do.
Very interesting.
And so I went back twice again. Immediately after, about a couple of years after that, I went back to do this Annapurna, which was later didn't work out, but it was a popular foods business. And then I went back at Mr. Dadi Seth's invitation to work on his project Millennium. So my finest pieces of work have been done in Levers. It was like a kid in a candy shop, because in those days startup agencies were not glamorous. Even your toilets were dirty. You couldn't call foreign clients or Indian clients to your office. You had to operate out of lobbies in restaurants and hotels. So going to Levers, where every software you ever wanted, you know, the ability to go and do this stuff, the ability to make presentations to Dr. Ganguly and so on the system, is just a huge learning. So that, and then I did 2 years of McKinsey. Because I felt that we were looking that if you do the quadrants of high business thinking, low business thinking, or high business understanding, low business understanding, and the other axis is high customer understanding and low customer understanding. Market research companies were high on customer understanding, low on business.
It's a high-low and a low-high combination, right?
Yeah, and so I wanted a high, and I thought consulting might have it. And so I went to McKinsey to try and figure it out. And of course, they didn't have it. And it wasn't a very good stint for me, and I was bored. But I learned two things. One was to put money where your marketing mouth is. So how do you model things? Shamelessly, fearlessly, put assumptions, make a spreadsheet sing. And the other was just the formal lexicon of strategy thinking. And as my other mentor, Tino Puri, told me, he said, what you got was confidence. And he said that confidence would not have been possible had it not been the system. I think that's fair. And then I went on my own.
And the related point, Rama, is again, if we look at solopreneurship as a journey, one of the questions that people need to think about is align with a platform versus go completely solo. How have you thought about that, and with the journey you've had? There are trade-offs there, but what's your take on that choice?
I think fundamentally, I believe that you have to not evaluate product options. You have to look at fit with customer need, which is what I always tell people: is this a good job or that a good job? Is look deep inside yourself and see what your needs are, and then figure out whether something's good or not, because it's that fit that makes life happen. I had spent all my life doing startup or quasi-startup jobs in big companies, in small companies, in McKinsey, it was a different kind of startup job because of the assignments I had. In Levers, it was startup, so I was tired and I was exhausted. And my main consumer need was that I never want to do something where I have to get to work at 9 in the morning because the troops need to be set a good example. And also that I never ever wanted to have to take on work that I didn't want to take on in order to keep the cash flows going, because this was a generation of no venture money. So it was brutal all my life. You hustled and you hustled and you hustled, and you paid others and you didn't have money for yourself, and it was tears and trauma. So that's really actually what drove it. And I said that I don't care about cashing out, but what I really want now is, and I was tired, and I think parenting also does that to you. And I just said that what I really want now is to do my thing. And that's the idea of solo. But it was a lot of pain, because I also want to tell you that I felt that I was a misfit in the corporate world, and that's why I was walking away. Mm-hmm. And so I have a friend who said to me that, why don't you figure out 3 role models of people who you really respect. And my list of 3 was C.K. Prahlad, Chidambaram, and Bhimsen Joshi. Okay, I knew 2 of them, C.K. and Chidambaram, pretty well. I didn't know Bhimsen at all. But I then realized that all 3 of them were absolutely solo performers. I mean, C.K., who is my teacher and my guru in every way, actually sat in wherever his office in Michigan, Ann Arbor, and gave the whole world not just the theory of core competence, the idea of competing for the future, the idea of fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, the man just did it repeatedly again and again and again. The idea of co-opting your consumers, the whole set of things. And then when you looked at Chidambaram, he was, when he wasn't being the minister and he was out of power, he was just a damn good lawyer. And when he stopped being a lawyer, he was a minister. But he was pretty much because of his individual stuff. And I went to Bhimsen's 70th birthday at that time, or 60, 70, and he said that, and he sang for himself. And he basically said that day from the podium that I've said to the Lord that the day I stop singing, please take me away. Once I had those 3, and and it's again serendipity. How did the 3 come? I don't know.
But the takeaway from each of their lives.
So then I said, here are guys who don't really have any umbrellas, platforms, nothing. But they've basically given the world what they've given the world. So
very interesting. Just sticking to the consumer metaphor, Rama, one of the books I was reading recently was a book called Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. And one of the things he says is, intuitively you would think when consumers are given more options, they would be happier. Yeah. But often they are worse off because A, the decision making has gotten complex, and B, there's a fear of missing out when the number of other paths goes beyond a certain number. And specifically in the context of multiple disruptions in the world of careers and jobs and technologies, and sort of wearing that sort of consumer insight lens, any thoughts on how people should process the complexity of the career market?
One of the young men actually I know said to me, he must have been, he was a student of mine from Ahmedabad, and I said to him that you're very lucky because you can do whatever you want, whereas my generation was told that if you made your bed, sleep in it. So my brother went to IIT for 2 years, hated it, was told to finish it, and then he went to the Indian Army after that on a permanent commission. So he said, ma'am, but you don't understand my anxiety. He said, my father's told me you can do anything you ever want to do. And he said, I'm always looking around the corner to see if there's something better. And I absolutely what you're saying, the fear of missing out. But I think the more there are choices, the more you have to be centered. The world is complex and volatile, and I think the more complex and volatile it is, the more you have to understand your center and your core. Going back to the earlier discussion we were having, you have to really, really understand. So if you are anchored, then you can withstand being buffeted. It's the same for companies too, right? I tell companies that if you're going to do competitor busting, and whatever the competitor came up with, you're going to re-engineer it, reverse engineer it and do better. When you have 20 competitors who are putting out 20 products because they also don't know, all ready, fire, aim, then are you going to bust 400? How do you know which 20 of the 400 to bust?
It's noise,
Yeah, so you eventually have to have a deep understanding of who you are and what you're trying to do with your customers and take it from there. So if you don't have that who you are understanding, or at least your navigational principles, I mean, I'm willing to sacrifice money for glory, or listen, I want a certain amount of balance in my life. And I think you then figure out, and even if the answer is that I have to do these things because I have to do them though I believe something else, I'm saying as long as you know that's what it is, you'll be able to deal with it better. But knowledge is an absolute master what is inside of you.
Yeah, very true. I think the bar in understanding of the inner world has gone up to cope, right? Then the need for it probably wasn't as pronounced 20 years back.
But the noise that stops you from doing it is also a lot higher.
That's a great insight. And it's actually just picking up on that tactically or behaviorally. Have you seen what people do to sort of cut the noise out and sort of look in?
There's a lot of, every other CEO I meet is into meditation, which kind of worries me a bit because, I think there's this meditation. And the other thing is I'm also noticing as a consumer insight, how many people have spiritual gurus? I mean, my own theory is that we as a society churn because we've missed the therapist phase. I used to wonder when people in America said, I go to my therapist, or when you watch movies, what the heck are you going to your therapist for? But actually now it's a spiritual guru who is actually the therapist of Indian society. And if you look at underneath the Armani suits and whatever other the suits, everybody's got threads around their wrist. Have you noticed how many people that you would normally not associate with puja and ritual because they're so westernized, they've all got threads around their wrist. So I think...
And what's the hypothesis around that?
No, that I think that they realize that there is a larger anchor, so it's got a religion, they may not do it themselves, but all those threads around their wrist means some puja has been done and the thread has been tied around your wrist, and you're not going to cut it the way, we used to in generations where life was easier. The minute you got out of the house, you cut it off and let it be. But here you actually want that succor and that support. And that's why I think even the line of business you propose to do is absolutely the need of the hour, because there is no there is no other institution that can help you do it, right?
Oh, interesting. And just double clicking on this notion of a personal brand, Rama. Again, when people think about themselves as a personal brand, both from the walk and the talk perspective, talk to us a little bit about the parallels you see in terms of what people should do and the mistakes you see people making, both on the walk element and the talk element.
I think there is substance and there is style. Very often I've seen people pick up style variables. I see a lot of management at boards, for example, and I see how a lot of people will pick up the CEO's mannerisms, but not the substance. As a result, the guy down the line gets whacked, because I sometimes ask myself, why am I whacking this guy? Whereas I've taken it from the CEO, am I being hierarchical around this? And I realize that the CEO has substance that makes up for his style issues, whereas the guy down the line doesn't have it. So it could be something as simple as when the guy down the line says, obviously, you take it from the CEO, because when he says, obviously, he's usually got a very good point that is signaling to you that you should have seen it, right? So that's on the more trivial side. But I think people are not, I think people have to actually ask themselves, what is my positioning? It's again back to the consumer need versus the world outside. If you say, what is required to succeed in that world, and you build your brand based on that, it's not going to work. As you know, of all brands. There has to be a brand intention. It's like strategic intent. So you have to ask yourself, how do I choose to play? That's what I mean by the walk and the talk. The where am I going to add value? So even let's say you're a complete newcomer on a board, okay? You have to ask yourself, in this Karma Bhumi, where am I? Why am I on this board? Therefore, where do I choose to add value? How will I add value? And how will I signal that I'm adding value? It's no different from companies. Right. So some of my boards, I am there because I genuinely believe that we all have to do jury duty on companies, because that's really what trusteeship of a citizen is in this country. So if you're on a public sector board, if you're on an academic institution board, or quasi-social entities like bank boards, you are there truly for governance. I don't think you're there to dazzle everybody with your marketing wisdom or your insight. But you're really there to say, I'm sorry, I don't think the chairman can chair the nominations committee, or I'm sorry, there is asymmetry of information. So in every place, I think you have to decide how are you going to add value, and then figure it out accordingly. That's one part of it. But it's about you and that place, the combination. And more generally, I think you have to ask yourself, for example, I've grappled in the past, and I'm grateful that I'm not young anymore, because I don't have to grapple with these questions anymore. The net present value of damage of anything I do to myself now is close to zero.
You're looking at terminal value figures these days, right?
Absolutely. I'm saying it's close to zero. If you haven't got your marriage fixed, if you haven't got your kids fixed, if you haven't got your career fixed, it's never going to get fixed, right? But sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
You were talking about positioning.
Yeah, I was thinking about positioning. That I've always grappled with, am I a technician or am I a manager? Okay, and by technician, I mean broadly is technical rocket science. And I can see that I went through the phase of being the manager and I went through the phase of all that. But now I'm clear that I want to come back to being the technician in a different kind of way. Because I have a history and I like to believe that maybe a little bit of wisdom. So I'm not going to necessarily tell you 5 ways in which you can make Google search work better for you. I mean, really, I don't care. But I think I can sit down and say, hey, what is brand building as we knew it? The basis on which old brands were built, the new basis for brand building. What are we losing out from the past and what are we gaining from the present? Now that's clearly technical. But somewhere this business of I want to go up the ladder, I want to be chairman of XYZ place, I want to be CEO. So I'm quite clear that I would rather be kingmaker than king. I mean, it sounds pompous, but I think what I really mean, bridesmaid than bride, I guess, is a better.
Right.
Or bridesmaid doesn't quite cut it. I think kingmaker rather than king.
I get where you're going with this.
And this is the debate I actually have had with someone else. We were both speaking at a Women's Day event, and he was saying that this I don't want to be CEO is not an acceptable answer if you're serious about your career. And that nobody can get power from a staff function. And I said that's so much BS because in today's world, the chief of analytics will actually determine pricing which the CEO cannot overrule. And the amount of power you will have as a result of being who you are or if you have the voice of the customer. I mean, I think that has far greater power than if you have anything else. So I think you have to understand also where the sources of your success come from. Even the source of power is what you need, the source of power. If esteem is what you need, the source of your esteem. So you do have to think about positioning in that context.
Got it. And, one of the pieces I want to pick up, you brought up C.K. Prahalad, core competence.
Yeah.
I remember a quote that you mentioned from Indra Parikh.
Yeah.
She taught me as well at IMA. Yeah. If there's a game that only you can play, then go and find a playground or create a playground.
That only you know how to play.
Then go and make a playground there.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about how you've thought about it at different points in time and what that means for you.
So I told you earlier about the quadrant of business understanding and customer understanding and wanting the high on both. And because I didn't, and that was the context, in fact, in which Indira said it, because I was disappointed that McKinsey didn't have the high. And I was complaining and not doing anything about it. So that's when I went and I actually set up my practice to do that. And then I had learned in McKinsey the framework. So there's a front end of, so then I conceptualized it as a front end of strategy, which is the what game will you play in the market, the where and how to compete as a business as a whole. And I said the back end was aligning all your functional strategies with it. So the make or buy decision is aligned with how are you best going to fulfill the promise to your customer. So it fits with choose the value, deliver the value, signal the value. So I said the front piece is mine. And that's a piece I'm going to hang on to. And in order to make sure when the downstream happens that everybody is true to the game, the market game so decided, you need to hire me in order to just be the what shall I say, not the policeman, but the sort of the protagonist for or the protector of the strategy that you first had, because otherwise it gets blurred as you go down the line.
Got it.
So once I picked that piece up, then we actually did a course in Ahmedabad around it. It's called Customer-Based Business Strategy, which I still do along with Professor Jain. And we've started now looking, and the challenge is to find case material which is high, because you get a lot of case material that's high-low. So we've started inviting CEOs to talk about it. We've started sensitizing. We've started doing a little bit of, we do an EDP. So every year now we do a PGPX, we do an EDP, we do a PGP2 program.
Very interesting.
So 4 years ago, C.K. Prahalad used to say, write for your own clarity, don't write for others. And I was also tired of teaching this course, which I still teach, by the way, now. So I wrote a book around the course with Sage Publications. It's called Customer in the Boardroom, Crafting Customer-Based Business Strategy.
Right.
And then I brought in all my board experience, etc. So when you have a hammer, everything's a nail, or the other way. If you have a lens, then everything you look at through the lens.
Right.
So I started looking at CEO evaluations and assessments of companies and how the balance scorecard is so weak on the customer dimension. It's usually market share, which is a derived arithmetic number. And then I started looking at net promoter score and how it would reward a CEO for operational marketing performance, but it does not reward a CEO for missing all the other games in town.
Right.
So then you start seeing, so continuously kind of look at it through the lens and learn it and build that space. So I'm always clear that I want to throw my body across a space and I will build later. So how do you throw your body across a space? So even with this ICE, this people researched my think tank, we call it ICE 360. It's India's consumer economy and citizen environment. I'm saying to them that how do we throw our bodies across the space? So let's put out, so we put out a 16-part series in Mint, we've put out income data, we've put out a lot of stuff. And you have to frame the debate and shape the debate if you want to throw your body across the space. So it's pretty aggressive metaphor, but...
Very interesting. And in a way, it sort of goes back to the point about voyaging and wayfinding, in the sense you take a stance from a lens, and then you sort of frame a discussion, and then you see where it takes you.
And I've often asked myself, when people say to me that, oh, you've not stayed in a job forever and ever, and I think about it, and I think, I was married to the same man for close to 30-something years, and so it's not like, and I've lived in the same city for a long time, so it's not like I don't have staying power. So what is it professionally that I think about? And then I realized that I have taken that stream, which is my interest and competence, which is customer insight, and I have taken that to wherever the cusp. So I've taken it into the cusp of governance. You've taken it into the teaching space. You've built along it. So I've kind of stayed faithful to that particular area of what I'm good at doing. And now I realize that what I'm good at doing is I'm trained to recognize patterns. So if you put me in a forensic why did the board screw up role, I will recognize patterns, maybe wrong patterns, but that's the way I think about it in my head.
And again, going back to the brand metaphor, I guess every brand has a core, and then it sort of builds around that core and builds attributes around that core. So in a way, the consumer's insight is, I guess, the core, and you've sort of taken it to different places.
And brand intention. You have to have some intention along the way.
Got it. And I want to pick up on a different theme, Rama, the notion of being a trusted advisor. Again, a lot of consultants, banks, legal firms vie for that spot. In your head, what's the delta from being good at delivering value as a consultant in a certain domain to being a trusted advisor?
If I were American, I'd say, Deepak, thank you for asking me that question to enable me to answer it. But yeah, someone said McKinsey knows that the most important part of the client's anatomy is his ear. It's not his brain. But so I thought about it a lot, where I got upset. For example, I used to get upset that I was getting hired by people because they had faith in me. They had trust in me, but they didn't necessarily have faith in what I was telling them to do by way of project work. And I sort of thought that I should be making money from my technical brilliance. But why am I making money for being the person that they can talk to? And to me, it felt honestly a bit like prostituting myself. It again goes back to all the baggage that you build over the years. And I thought about this and battled with it long and hard. And then I figured that somewhere along the way, if you look at attribute, its consequence and values, at the end of the day, every brand should have the value. I mean, the attribute of Nirma may be whatever, cheaper and harsher. The consequences helps me balance my budget. But the value is Messiah of the masses, which is Patanjali and Baba Ramdev as well. So I think, the other thing that upsets me is that I know my premium commanding ability comes from saying it like it is and calling a spade a bloody shovel. But I shouldn't be commanding price premium ability from that in my head, because that is not right. But I also find that when I go into meetings and for a long time now, and if I don't say anything, then people actually tell me that, I am very worried because you have not opened your mouth. I mean, do you hate it that much? Are we so completely wrong?
Sort of game theory again, right? People are making assumptions about the silence.
And these are very senior people. These are people I respect. These are people I work with. The people I listen to. And then you find that an integral part of your brand is she calls it like it is, she says it like it is, and that's what is leading to premium. So I now realize that the technical brilliance that you want to make money on, because I made this new algorithm and everybody should buy it, I have this new framework, I think you have to continue to build on those as well, but it is eventually the balance tilter, as we call it, the balance tilter. So if competitive advantage only comes from saying it like it is, doesn't make sense, but competitive advantage usually comes from bundling things. So you have to be technically superior, you have to be experientially superior. I think you have to have you can call a spade a bloody shovel, but at the end of the day, you also have to be liked along the way. So my formula for that is very simple. I don't want to work with anybody. I can't have a cup of coffee at 9 in the morning and say, I saw this terrible movie last night. I don't know why I was watching it. It was like reading a bad book. So I generally like people, and so it's a bundling that gives you competitive advantage. But yeah, that is something that's not fully resolved for me, because I hate the fact that I'm getting paid because I am because of a personality trait rather than a technical
stuff
something.
That you worked on over here.
So I constantly seek validation where people say, which is why I put my technical views out in the public domain so much, because I think it continues to build the technical side of the brand. And I suspect that now when I'm saying I'm going back into the heartland, I feel that the brand has wandered too long around governance, policeman, general theorist, and that you need to put the teeth back into it.
Very
so
interesting.
Somewhere that's working in the back of my head.
Very interesting.
I'm reminded of my conversation with Atul Kasbekar, the celebrated photographer, who spoke about how he was trying to reinvent himself with the democratization of photography. Here's a clip from that conversation.
I have a friend who's a spiritual guide. He lives in Bangalore, and he was saying that I think it's an excellent space for you, because what you may not see is but what he sees, and it actually turned out to be quite true. He's saying, you're actually a very habitable platform for people who otherwise would never meet each other to be pulled onto and to coexist and work in a harmonious way and be able to create.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah, I never quite thought of that. Yeah, so I said I'm a platform.
Sometimes when we seek external feedback, people often share insights about us on dimensions that we may not have thought of earlier. So getting somebody to show you the mirror could unearth some of these insights that could be transformative in how you think about what next. One of the leaders I'm working with in transition is a managing director of a large auto ancillary company. He was keen to change to a similar setup in terms of what next, but when we looked at some of his signature strengths and where he's been distinctive in the past and where he gets his energy, we said he's probably at his best during moments of crisis and in handling tough situations. We felt that he could be great for turnarounds and distressed assets, and we are now working with that theme and looking for opportunities across sectors without being restricted to auto ancillary. Thank you for listening. For more, please visit playtopotential.com. If you want to listen to the podcast offline, then you could consider subscribing on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other podcast apps.
So moving to a different theme, Rama, women and leadership. Again, we spoke about personal brand earlier, but is there a sort of a nuance around how women should think about it? Anything specific from a gender perspective that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think again, it's about the internal problems. I think women have to fix a couple of things inside. One is this perform, don't belong. If the entire focus is on belonging, then you're never going to fully belong and you're never going to fully perform. So I think if you focus on performance, then it doesn't really matter. I'm not saying be obnoxious or anything, but you know what I mean. I mean, where do you focus your effort? Do you focus your effort on performance or do you focus on belonging?
What do you mean by belonging?
By belonging to the group. Let's say if it's the management team or the board team or whatever it is. So belonging would mean that I would come in earlier, have the coffees if I didn't feel like it. I'm saying I feel like it. It's
put up with a lot of stuff.
The network before, the network after. Or do you want to write a note to everybody 2 days earlier that says that I want to, because we may not have time at the agenda, I want to frame my thoughts on this matter and I think this is what you should do. Now I do that a lot. And belonging means you need the opportunity when you open your mouth, that they've decided not to
conform to the
yeah, and if
norms,
they've decided that they're not going to discuss the topic at that point in time, then you let it be. Or you're also vulnerable to people saying, hey, do we really need to do this right now? But perform is really saying that let me figure out, I'm here because I will add value. Let me maybe work a little harder to add the value. But I'd rather spend my time there than spend my time trying to be part of the gang, because maybe I will never be part of the gang. Right? If you like the gang, that's great. I mean, then be part of it. But that's really where the effort is. Should you kill yourself doing a lot of stuff in terms of that? I think that's really important. And I always think about it also as this majority-minority community. I think that women should understand that it's not that the deck is stacked against them. It's the majority community is making the rules for themselves. Sometimes the stuff can get pretty bad, and I think that you should be willing to call it out or sensitize others when you can, or find ways around it. To pretend that there is no gender issue doesn't make sense. So, for example, I've had chairmen who've never let me speak. Which is why I will use email as effectively as I like. Or I will set the process and say, can each of us please have 1 minute, please, and we can draw lots for the order in which you choose to have us speak.
Got it.
The option, and I'm sort of careful to be able to do this, or if you're doing things which is contrary to what is expected, and I think there is a real difference. So often there is for lack of a better word, there's a boys' club that kind of operates with the majority community set of rules and norms. I think to deny that doesn't make sense. To join that and feel terrible doesn't make sense. So in some ways you have to, and I think you then get respected much more if you're focused, if you're predictable in that sense. And then you will get, and then you get included where you need to be included. I mean, I don't think I need to be included in everything else. People tell me that, unless you actually network. And I'm saying it's not that I'm not networking. What am I networking around? If I have an issue I want to discuss, I will call every single member of the board and I will say, you know what, this thing is bothering me and I want to understand this better. And I want to know what you do.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so 2 of them may say, I don't really agree with the issue. 3 of them may say, hey, it's worth it. Let's talk about it. So that's networking for me. Networking is not about not saying what I don't want to say because they may get upset with me.
Got it. And a broader question, Rama, which is, if we look at the question, how can we cultivate more women leaders to grow to the top?
Yeah.
And again, there's been enough literature around what the system's answer to that should be. But from an individual aspiring woman leader's perspective, are there 2-3 themes around how they should think about that journey?
Yeah, I'm also a little concerned about this, what qualifies to be a woman leader. I think everybody should fundamentally think about what is the essence of winning for you in your career. So it's all the issues we've talked about. Do you go this way, do you go that way? I mean, you have it as a man as well, but women have it much more. And I think not be afraid to say that this is the way I want to win. And go for the way you want to win. It's only when you adopt somebody else's idea of what winning is that you can't really go for it, right? So figure out exactly what winning is, and go for that.
Moving on, Rama, executive leaders transitioning to boards, board roles. In your experience, what are your thoughts on how they should think about board positions when they sort of start taking board positions? But the more important point is, what's your thought on what skills do they start building and what should they stop?
So a board role is nose in and fingers out, right? An executive role is fingers in and nose in and everything in. So that's why I think consultants make the transition more easily because we're quite happy to have our fingers out of things.
Right.
So that's the one thing I think executives, so you have to really, really, really understand that this is jury duty more than actually being the protagonist of the thing. That's hard. But the other thing also is that I noticed that executive leaders who transition to non-executive, are you talking about executives going to executive board positions or executives going to non-executive?
The latter.
So when you go to non-executive board positions, we find that there is a lot of sympathy for the executive management. So we usually find that the board divides up when there are issues, and the executive guys who have been executives have that whole empathy and sympathy And so they think their job is to sort of make up for the fact that they weren't protected in their tenures and to be the protector.
I can understand why he or she would.
Yeah, and that, our job here is not to disappoint the management. Whereas I'm saying, if you want acquisition desperately, I still don't have to give it to you. And if you're going to get demoralized, grow up. Right? Now, let's talk about why this is important. But my loyalty is somewhere else. It is not to you. I'm not here to be cheerleader, nursemaid, nappy, coach. I think that's the stuff that executive managers tend to get into. They get into
insight.
coaching.
The loyalty towards the management sort of comes by default.
And then therefore you're the coach and you're this person and so on. As compared to saying that all of us on boards are called to make judgment calls. So whatever is your background, you bring your background judgment to make the judgment call, and that's all you should do. And you just make judgment calls for everything that's put in front of you. And these are sins of commission, sins of omission, plans, whatever it is that's what you have to do. So that's what the executive management, and then they tend to sort of turn their noses up at other people who are, for example, let's say if you're a large institutional shareholder, and you don't have any of this executive experience, you tend to wield it around as a superior animal. Or on the other side, you get adversarial with the CEO for precisely the CEO doesn't want your coaching, doesn't want your experience.
It's really interesting you say this, because I was talking to an investor who was an entrepreneur earlier, and he was making a similar point. If you're an entrepreneur earlier, there's that sort of, you can either be too empathetic, or you can sort of get upset if the person isn't heeding advice, and the answer might be somewhere in the middle. Right? So it's
you have to be karmic. You have to say, this is, based on the facts in front of me.
Got it.
This is my evidence-based answer.
Got it. And just wrapping up, Rama, a couple of things. One is 3 things they don't teach in IMA but should. You have a unique insight as an alumnus and as a faculty member today.
Well, there are a lot of things they don't teach at IMA. I think the one of the concerns that's with I think on management education now is that, and particularly even IMA, is that we're going much more down the technical path. I think much less down the problem-solving path. So it's a reaffirmation of, here we teach you how to learn so you can learn the rest of your life. That's what Ravi Mathai said. And think about it, there was a whole generation of us who should have been wiped out in 1991. And nothing we ever did equipped us for this. But if you look at everyone, including, let's say, KV Kamath, who's a 71 batch person, and onwards, I think everybody regrouped and relearned. And so to say that it's not technical, that is your God, but your ability to learn and your ability to do problem solving, to build back, I think, respect for that. The second is just to say, hey, listen, sliding doors happen, shit happens in life, sliding doors happen in life, and God give me the equanimity to accept what I can and to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I also think that, speaking also with my consumer hat on, all these people are products of putting their life on hold from standard 9, because you have to get the 99% in 10, otherwise you're screwed. Get the same in 12. Do the same 1 mark point loss in IIT will lose you your seat, and same with IIM. So at a time when we should actually be having more risk takers, because the world outside is VUCA and amorphous and all that, we're actually getting people who are hothouse flowers. So the top 200 actually, if we decanted them and threw them away and took the next 200 and the next 400, we'd actually get better adjusted human beings. This plus minus Six Sigma.
That's a very interesting point.
This plus minus Six Sigma guys that we're getting.
These are sort of a distorted.
Rarefied hothouse flowers wouldn't have been there had they not listened to mommy and daddy every single day of their lives from standard 9. That's what worries me.
Very interesting. And the last question, the leaders, the 2 questions they ask as they go through their journey is sort of where to go and how to grow. Sort of along similar lines as where to play and how to win that businesses ask. Just given your journey, any headline takeaways for people to reflect on in terms of navigating?
No, I don't think I have anything profound. But it's the same thing, right? You have to have navigational principles. I think the destination is, and that is the new strategy theory as well, right? If you read all the stuff of strategy in a complex world, they're saying that the destination may have changed. You may not want it when you get there. It may have self-destructed, blew up, that's a new world, right? But you have to have navigational principles for the journey. You have to be very clear, because those act both as guardrails and as motivators. And so you approximately know what direction you're going in. That's how Google builds new products as well, right? Whether it gets used for insurgency, activism, more romance in the world is up to how the user environment uses it. So,
sort of design thinking principles and sort of prototyping and moving forward kind of.
And fail fast and succeed at leisure. But more important, understand what your navigational principles are. Don't keep saying this destination, that, because destination theory. So it's more like a guided missile. You have to keep adjusting it and you won't know it's hit target till it's hit target.
Got it.
So if in this world, more than in the world that I grew up in, if you're not open to changing destinations, you're really going to get screwed. And today there is much more joy to be had at the confluence of things. And so when people say, oh, my daughter's doing psychology, I'm like, great, you can either go into consumer or neuroscience, you can go into consumer behavior, you can go into HR, you can go into designing interfaces in a tech company, you can do so many things. So you have to have a core skill, which is why I find these BBA kind of educations a little bit dangerous, because like my academic friends tell me as well, if you studied economics, your mind is wired in one particular way to learn. So how does your mind fundamentally get wired? And you can take the wiring somewhere else, right?
Right.
So if you studied anthropology and sociology, your mind is wired in a particular way, and that is also part of your core skill.
Right.
Your ability to see it through the lens of your training, and that is the purpose of education.
Right.
So just understanding this will just make it a lot better.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time and insights, Rama.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, me too.
The big takeaway for me from this conversation was that all of us need to have a set of clear navigational principles to process the world around us, and that has to be anchored around our insight into ourselves as a consumer. That could change from time to time, but being able to articulate that to yourself could play a significant role in your fulfillment in the journey ahead. Thank you for listening. For insights into journeys of other accomplished people, please log on to playtopotential.com. On the website, you could search for a topic and look for nuggets from different speakers on that topic. If you want to listen offline, let's say during a flight or during your car ride back home, you could subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other podcast apps that will make it easier for you to listen offline when you want. If you find this content purposeful, do take a moment to leave a review on iTunes and share it with the people that you think could benefit from this. I look forward to having you at one of the subsequent conversations of the Play to Potential podcast series. Bye now.